This is Unplugged, Decoding, Engaging in the Next Generation, talking about Gen Z and Gen A. And so our time together today, we're going to talk about who are today's learners, how did we get here, how do we help, and then what's the impact to educational outcomes and the data that we know that we're measured against for assessments, right? Whether we agree with it or not, and I know there's a lot of thoughts around this, but we are scored on a report card, and that is how we're indicated as a district or a school. And I know that's unpopular in some spaces, but that's just a reality in which we're navigating. And so understanding today's students will better help us be prepared to address some of those indicators on our report card. And so before we do that, though, I want to jump into who I am. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I also I've loved school since I was a little kid. I knew that I was going to be a teacher since I was little, although I was discouraged from pursuing education post-graduation from my mom and my stepdad. But I went on to be a high school English teacher. I was a middle school principal, and most recently I was associate superintendent of secondary schools here in the OKC metro area. And now I own my own consulting company called Orange Sparrow, where I help educators and entities understand this generation. But I also work at Oklahoma City University, working with new teachers going into the field of education and new principals going into the field as well. And so really grateful to give back and to serve. Before we dive into today's learners, I always believe that life is happening for us and not to us. And I believe in the power of gratitude. And so I truly am grateful to be in this space with you today. And I'm super grateful that you're here as well. But more importantly, thank you for answering the call to serve and lead in your respective space. It's so necessary and so important, especially in a time in which there's a lot of negative rhetoric around education. So just super grateful for those who continue to serve and lead. So let's start out with defining who these kiddos are. Gen Z this school year, 24-25. Gen Z are current 7th through 12th graders. Gen Alpha would be pre-K through 6th. And as of January, we have a new generation, which is Generation Beta. And they're not in school yet, but they're coming in 5 years. And so in just a couple of years, we will have a complete different reshape and reframe of what schools will look like based on the generations that we're serving, based on these years in which they were born. I classify them as social media loving, fad following, slang using, cell phone addicted individuals. And that's just the way in which they were raised with these high levels of technology. They are private, they're restless, they're anxious, they're tech savvy, they're nurtured, they're entrepreneurial, and they're digital. I share that with you because I think about my own cousin who is in Maryland as a high school senior and who's running businesses on YouTube, making more money than a teacher, right? And so our kids today have a lot of access to things at their fingertips. They're really creative. They're super digital. And we're going to talk through how that shift of moving from in-person conversations and connection has impacted them into the digital world. They can be present in a room with adults, yet not present at the same time. We know that to be true with the devices in which they're navigating, but they also live in an entirely different world on a screen than they do in real world. And this is where I'm going to push for a second. We know there are a lot of social media apps out there: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called today. It's always changing, right? And so whatever platform they're showing up on, they're showing up as a different version of themselves. And so in some spaces and in respectful mindset, some of them are showing up as 5 or 6 different identities. And so they're confused as to who they are. And that impacts how they show up and show out. Culture and society influence them as much as their parents do. Who would have thought several years ago we'd have TikTok influencers making millions of dollars? I might be a bitter party of one or jealous, thinking that that's the life they have. But it does influence our students and how they show up as well. We know today our kids are coming to school or respective spaces, work as well for our Gen Z, super, super restless and tired at higher levels than ever before. That's because they're on a screen late at night and they're restless during the day. This is where we need parents and guardians and caretakers to really help educators reshape what the bedroom looks like, taking devices and screens out of there. But we also recognize that it's really difficult to do so when we know a lot of our students are raising themselves and or their brothers and sisters when parents are working 2 or 3 jobs. Yet those blue lights and those devices in their rooms do impact their ability to focus, and has impacted the highest diagnosis of ADHD than any previous generation before, which impacts their ability to believe in themselves and their overall confidence. These are some really interesting statistics. If we know technology is not great for students in human development, yet we know that it is what the lifeline is for so many of us. And so 72% of children age 8 and under have used a mobile device of some sort. I thought that was really interesting that we have children 8 and under already using a device at such high levels. But really importantly, I think it's important to highlight that 28% of 1-year-olds use a tablet computer and 28% of 2-year-olds can navigate a mobile device without help. And 27% of parents are using mobile devices to put kids to sleep, yet we know the research says that it's not conducive. And I did a parent workshop last night for a local district here in the OKC metro area, and a mom was asking, okay, my kid wants to listen to music as they sleep. Can they listen to a rap song? And so I had to have that conversation with her that those words are actually